Hello, everybody, and welcome to the newest episode of the Theater Enthusiast Project. I'm very excited to welcome our next guest, currently starring in Parade at the Jacobs Theater on Broadway until August 6th. Please welcome Jay Armstrong Johnson. Woo! I used to have an applause app. Nobody heard it. So now I just do a really awkward applause and woo, and we're done. Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't hear you clap, but I can hear you speak. Now I'm sweaty and I'm
There
putting
you
up
go.
my hair and my AC is on. Maybe you just do that to
I
people. You have
understand.
that effect, the emotional effect from Parade, and then just from like meeting you
Maybe,
and talking to you.
maybe,
Yeah.
we sweat a lot in parade because we're all wearing like three-piece wool suits and it's the summertime. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking about that too, because I saw Shakespeare in the Park a couple of weeks ago, and luckily I saw
ah,
it when it wasn't hot.
oh
And
wow,
it's just
lucky.
been like disgusting outside the past couple of days. And I was like, I don't know how they're doing it. Cause I'm walking outside in like a t-shirt, like tank top and shorts, and I can't even breathe that well. And I'm just walking. So
Yeah, I know. I've worked a lot at the Muni in St. Louis, which is also an outdoor theater, and I
yeah.
did Hello Dolly there, and I wore
Mhm.
like a wool three-piece suit in Hello Dolly and like 98-degree weather outside. It was like
Yeah.
truly wild, like
Yeah.
Bikram theater.
Yeah. How is that performing outside, and like how do you survive as a performer
I mean,
doing
I'm from Texas, so like heat is a thing that I'm so used to. So like, when other people that are like from the north, like they complain, and I'm like, oh, this is nothing. Um, but really, at the Muni in particular, it's super magical because there's like 11,000 seats out there, and so it's like you're performing for a stadium. So the energy coming back from the audience is really kind of cool, and it's huge. You have to like wave your hand every time you say a line so that people know where you are on stage.
yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I like doing it because it's only a week. It's like, all right, I only got to do 7 shows of this.
Mhm.
L- Take it, live it while you can, because
Yeah.
it goes away so quickly.
Yeah. So I do always ask where people are from. That's always my first question, but you mentioned you're from
Ah,
Texas. So would you like to elaborate on
yeah,
that? So where in Texas?
yeah. I was born on a balmy Sunday morning. No, I have no
I
idea
was
what day I
brought
was
home in
born.
a blizzard, so to each his own.
Boom.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, Fort Worth, Texas, is where I was born. The DFW area. Most people have maybe flown through that
Mhm.
international airport. But yeah, born in the late 80s, grew up doing theater. I was like 13 when I started doing theater. Really kind of fell in love with it. Not many boys in Texas wanted to like dance and sing and act. So, I was kind of a hot commodity
Yeah.
in the late 90s, early aughts. But yeah, Texas is my home state, uh, as much as I love to not admit that.
Well, current climate of everything. So what got you, because you said at 13 you started to perform. So what kind of got you interested in performing?
Um, I'm I'm not sure. I've always had the bug for it, right? So like fifth grade, Mr. Ingram did like a much abridged version of Romeo and Juliet, and like I really wanted to play Romeo, and like how many boys in the fifth grade wanted to put on white tights and recite Shakespeare in front of the entire student body? Not many, so I got Romeo.
Also,
So I've always,
Shakespeare in fifth grade is interesting. I mean, my elementary school did The Wizard of Oz, so there you go.
yeah, there's something weird about that, right? I'm like, my sister is a year older than me, and she played Juliet, and so it's like, oh, the pressure's on to play Romeo in my year. So I don't. There's always been this like gravitation toward the stage,
Hmm.
um, and I really don't even know where it came, but that's the initial. That was my first initial like, oh, I love this, and I also have like an English teacher that was like encouraging me to love it as well. But I started singing in my church choir, and then I had some friends at church that were doing theater at this community theater program called Kids Who Care Performing Arts, KWC Performing Arts. And so they like invited me to come audition for A Midsummer Night's Dream, the rock musical. So I did, and I got Puck. So my first two major like theatrical experiences were both Shakespeare things, which is kind of wild. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was. I found theater through like church choir, which is
Yeah.
kind of funny.
Have you done Shakespeare since?
I did a musical version of Romeo and Juliet again called The Last Goodbye,
Oh,
which is
that's
Jeff
right.
Buckley
Yeah.
music.
Hmm.
So that was another big Shakespeare moment. I did Romeo and Juliet in college. Um, I played Romeo. So Romeo and Juliet's been this thing that's kind of like always swirled in and around me, but I've not done any other Shakespeare's besides Romeo and Juliet and Midsummer.
Yeah. I think maybe we just need to like manifest it for you know, more Shakespeare. Why not?
Oh heck yeah. Well, the version of A Midsummer Night's Dream that I did as a kid is
Mhm.
like this like disco rock fusion version of Midsummer with Shakespeare text. And it would fit so well with like the public works program at the public. So I'm thinking about like digging it out and asking KWC for the script and maybe some demos, and maybe I could see if it's worth pitching it to Oscar Eustis at the Public Theater. I don't know. I've thought about
Well,
that a lot.
I'm gonna say this to you, Jay. I had somebody on the podcast a year ago, and they said how their dream was to do Shakespeare in the Park. I shit you not, a year later, after we recorded the podcast, they announced that they were going to be doing Hamlet at Shakespeare in the Park. So they're currently
Is
like,
it A2?
no, it's Nick Rayberger,
Okay.
yeah, who plays
Oh
like,
wow. Okay,
yeah.
great.
So like we manifested it for him, so we can manifest this for you, like a year later.
Wow.
Like make it happen.
All right.
You never
Here
know.
we go.
Yeah, just with
You
these
never
Egyptian
know.
arms. So what made
That's right.
you decide to go to NYU? Because that's where you went to college.
Right. I knew I wanted to get out of Texas. That was the first thing that I knew. Like, I was a pretty good student, and I probably could have gotten a full ride to like UT Austin, you
Mhm.
know. But I just knew that I wanted to leave Texas. I wanted to get to New York as soon as because I'd been working professionally as a teenager, like doing regional theater in my hometown, and so I was meeting a lot of New York actors
Mhm.
through my regional theater in Fort Worth, and so just like that idea is like, oh, okay, I'm already doing professional work. I'm working with professional directors and actors, and I just want to get there, right? So I only applied to NYU, and the reason I applied to the Steinhardt School of Music at NYU was because my dance teacher growing up, Diane West, her daughter Meryl danced all the way through high school, which I did as well, and then decided to go to a vocal program for college, which was Steinhardt. So I had that person that had done the thing that I was applying for, and then
Mhm.
also been on Broadway. So I had this like, uh, uh, a mentor of sorts that
Mhm.
did the thing. So I was like, oh, okay, I can follow that path.
Like Ariana DeBose singing, she did the thing. Sorry, it was there. I had to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
There
Many
was
people are
a
doing the thing.
oh, Angela Bassett did the thing. Okay.
She sure
Well,
did.
yeah, she did. She didn't win the Oscar, unfortunately. But anyway,
She didn't. She
no.
didn't.
But you know what? She's getting an honorary one. So
Yeah.
she did something.
That's when like when you get a lifetime achievement award, like that's the most important, right?
Yeah, for real.
Yeah.
So what was your experience like at NYU?
Uh, what was it like? Oh, Ruthie Ann Miles was at parade last night, and she was a graduate student when I was undergrad, so we were kind of reminiscing about our time at NYU. Um, I just loved being in the city, right? I moved here when I was 17. I like turned 18 like my second or third week of college. I was just excited to be in New York, and I kind of moved to New York and went to NYU uh with the goal of dropping out, right? Like I knew I wanted to be in New York so that I could be auditioning for Broadway shows and national tours.
Hmm.
Um, then I used NYU as like my safe haven to do so. So I was like
Yeah.
skipping all my gen ed classes to like go to replacement auditions for a chorus line on Broadway and replacement auditions for Gypsy starring Patti LuPone on Broadway. So that was like my goal.
Hmm.
So I used New York. Um, I used my place here to actually like continue my professional career. And thank God I had such an incredible voice teacher, Jeremy A. I still take lessons from him, so he really kind of shaped my voice
Mhm.
to be a leading man. I was such a dancer growing up that I could have very well been pigeonholed in the ensemble and, covering leads. And so I had to thanks to Jeremy for like getting my voice to a place where I could like tackle leading roles. But I liked NYU. Um, I just wanted to drop out.
Yeah. So when I went to Pace University, and that was before
Oh, sure.
Pace University, what it is now. And I remember when I
Right.
was going, they're like, our program is different from other theater programs in New York because we're going to allow you to audition. You don't have to, because there are some schools that don't let you audition while you're studying and training. Was NYU similar to that, where you were like sneakfully auditioning for stuff, or they allowed it? Because you did eventually, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even remember there being conversations around what's allowed and what's not allowed.
Mhm.
I was paying my own way through NYU, so I didn't give a flying what they allowed. Like I took out wild student loans, both private and federal, just to be there.
Mhm.
So I don't really remember there being conversations around what was allowed. All I knew is that like most of the people that I knew went to NYU, all of the more successful ones were dropouts, like because
Yeah.
they started their careers earlier than everyone else. So yeah, I'm sure that there was some conversation around it. There was more conversation around like you're not allowed to perform in main stage shows until your sophomore year. And like those were like the conversations that like I'm like whatever. Okay, cool. Then
Yeah.
fine, I'll go audition for Broadway.
God, just the politics of college theater programs, just
It's wild.
it is. I saw a play a few months back, and I was lucky enough to have one of the actors and directors on the podcast called Mac Bitches. And I told them
Hmm.
it just watching the show just brought me back to like college theater trauma and about like all of the stupid politics that like go into it.
Yeah,
I was like, oh my God, I'm so far away from it now, but this show is bringing me back. But so if you're
that's right.
listening and you're in college, the end of the day, it doesn't matter.
It really doesn't. And
No,
I have 6 Broadway shows, an international television show, and I am just now paying off my student loans for a degree I do not have.
yeah. So let's talk about that. You achieved your goal at college by not graduating. So tell the world why.
Well, I started auditioning to replace in a chorus line, I think my freshman year, maybe my sophomore year of college.
Mhm.
Because it was my sophomore year, because I got a chorus line regionally in my hometown summer after my freshman year of college.
Mhm.
That show gave me my equity card. So then when I returned to school on my sophomore year, I was able to actually go to equity calls.
Mhm.
Um, and they were constantly having auditions for Broadway replacements and a chorus line. So I auditioned for Broadway replacements and a chorus line for like a year and a half. I think I went in like 4 or 5 different times.
Mhm.
But I was 19, 20 years old, so there's really only one character
Mhm.
in a chorus line that I was right for, and that was Mark. And my friend Paul was playing Mark on Broadway, and he was not about to leave his Broadway show. So I didn't ever end up replacing, but then the national tour was being launched
Mhm.
my junior year. And so they brought me back in for the national tour, and I got that. So I left mid-semester, mid second semester junior year to go on the first national tour of a chorus line.
You never looked back.
I really didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I kept taking with my voice teacher because
Yeah.
he's so damn good. And so I kind of stayed connected to NYU because I was taking voice lessons
Yeah.
as through NYU still. I was a part-time student, I guess, to get those credits. And so NYU, because I was still technically registered as a student for like a year or two after I left, I was able to come back to NYU and actually perform. Like they
Wow.
were doing this big gala concert of King David by Alan Menken,
Mm.
based on the story of David and Goliath. with like a huge orchestra, and they were giving Alan Menken like an honorary degree from NYU. So I came in and I like played David like
Wow.
after I had dropped out because I was still a registered student. So I stayed pretty connected, and
Yeah.
I also came back and taught master classes. You know, I'd always go back and teach all of the vocal majors, the dance classes, because I was like one of those dancers that came into a vocal program.
Yeah.
So, but now I don't know anyone there. I don't know like zero professors are still there that taught me at NYU. So I don't really go back anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't even tell you what's happening at Pace because I don't know. And I kind of don't care. So
Same.
there's aspect of it. So I guess my question of would you go back to get a degree is kind of like null and void. Would you go back to finish a degree of any type?
If someone else paid for it, sure. I mean, when I was going to NYU, it was like 55K a year or a
Yeah.
semester or some crazy shit like that.
Hmm.
So I think now it's like an upwards of like 88, right? Or
Wow.
90 even. So,
Yeah.
and NYU is a private university, and so certain credits don't transfer to other programs, and so you like have to go back to NYU. So
Yeah.
I'm all, I've been in so much debt over the last like 15 years of my life that like I don't need this degree. Like, of course, my mom and dad would love for me to have one just so they
Yeah.
can say I'm a college graduate. But yeah, I don't care for it.
Yeah.
I would do it if someone else paid for it, but I'm not paying for it.
Well, maybe if you win the lottery, right? Or just put the money
Yeah,
towards something else.
sure. Or maybe I can be like Alan Menken and when I'm in my 50s, get an honorary degree.
Yeah, why
But
not?
I'll have to have composed a bunch of Disney movies and,
Well,
won
listen,
some
if you
Tonys.
have you have like a very good established career, you're kind of an alumni, but not really of NYU. You know, we're manifesting this musical of what is it? Midsummer that, you know, maybe you could star and direct it or something. Maybe that'll be the big break where NYU is like, you know what? Honorary
You know
degree.
what? This
This guy
guy.
right here. He knows what he's doing. He's been around. So, once the well, let's talk about what it's like touring, especially with the chorus line, because a
Mm.
chorus line, as everybody in the world knows, is a very physically demanding show. So, what is doing a show like that and traveling around the country like?
I mean, it was thrilling for me, number one, because I was 20 years old,
Yeah.
so young, making the most money that I'd ever seen in my entire life, right? We went out a production contract. So, like, I was a principal in a production contract tour. I could save my actual salary and live off of my per diem. We were going to all these amazing cities that I'd never been to and stay and sitting down for a while. You know, we were in Denver for 4 weeks, in LA for 7 weeks, and to Seattle and Portland and
Yeah.
Toronto. And I mean, it was just like it was super fun, and it was also a fun group too. Like Nikki Snelson was our Cassie, and my best friend Kevin Santos, like he was our Paul. So I've stayed so connected to a lot of the friends out there. But yeah, it was super hard, but like thinking back, I was like that as a 20-year-old, I had it, right? But like
Yeah.
I would never be able to go out. Maybe I could, but
Yeah.
you know, being young in a dance show is really it's good. Being older in a dance show, not so good, right? The body
Mhm.
it doesn't bounce back as quickly.
Yeah.
Um, it was difficult, but it was more fun than anything. You know, it kind of felt like an extension of college, but on the road with like no homework, right? It was just like I turned 21 in Costa Mesa, California. Like it was just like really, really fun.
Great. So, once a chorus line is over, what happens next?
Right. So at NYU, I had done a production of Floyd Collins that
Mhm.
like was seen by a lot of people in the industry, which then got me my first agent. Um, but I booked a chorus line before I signed with my agent. So they didn't take any of the money from that tour, but we had a meeting before I left for the tour to be like, we're all they said they only wanted me to spend 6 months on the road because they wanted me to get back to New York as soon as possible. I was like, great, sounds good. So I at least had an agent that was there advocating and putting me out there for auditions. And so I remember being on tour. I left the tour after 6 months, did King David, at NYU. And then my replacement, Dave Hull, sprained his ankle like the day before he was supposed to go out on tour. So they called me to be like, could you come back out on tour while Dave heals? So I was like, yes, but I'm doing King David. So like you gotta give me a week or two. So then I went back on tour. And that's when I met Robin Herder because she replaced Nikki Snelson. So I met like a bunch of new friends that were replacement cast members, and I did like another month on the road. And during that month, I got an audition for Hair on Broadway, but I couldn't go in for it because I was touring. So that made me sad that I couldn't go in for it. But wah wah, I had a job. Then after Dave came back, I came back to New York, and they still hadn't found the understudy for Claude in Hair. So I got an audition for it, and I went in at the Public Theater. And I remember throughout college, I kept getting stopped on the street. Um, People thought I was Jonathan Groff. I guess we look a lot alike. And so a lot of people would be like, "Oh my God, I really love you in Spring Awakening." And I'd be like, "Thank you." So going in for Hair after the Park production, which Jonathan starred in, I think I walked into the room looking like Jonathan Groff,
Yeah.
which was worked in my favor, right? Sure, I can sing, sure, I can dance, sure, I can act. But I really was very reminiscent of the boy that had played the role that I was going into understudy right
Yeah.
before I did. So, and this was before they cast Gavin Creel. So I got cast as the Claude understudy before they even like snagged Gavin.
Yeah.
And that's how I got my first Broadway show.
Yeah. Because I was gonna say, because Jonathan and Gavin look so similar to each other.
Right?
Spitting
Exactly.
image. Yeah.
Right.
So what was it like for you, your first experience making were you in the tribe as well, and then you understudied, or were you just an off stage
I was a
understudy?
swing. So
Okay.
I was an offstage swing. I covered two principal roles, Claude and Wolf, and then I covered like six or seven tribe members.
Yeah. So what was it
Yeah.
like when you finally get the call that you're going on for the first time, whatever part that may have been? What was it like for you to make like your professional Broadway debut?
I made my Broadway debut in previews on a Saturday matinee because Gavin woke up sick. I had gone out the night before drinking and playing arcade games with Jason Michael Snow and Alex Brightman the night before. So I was hungover for my Broadway debut, going on for the lead
Which like
of
kind
Hair.
of weirdly works for Hair if you think about it.
That's right.
You know?
That's right. But what's crazy is that understudies don't get a, a moment to rehearse until after a show opens, right?
Yeah.
So understudies and swings, particularly offstage ones, are in the audience taking notes. If they get a music rehearsal here or get to step in for a person while they're in a costume fitting there, cool. But if not, you don't really start your rehearsal process until after opening night. So I went on for my Broadway debut playing a lead without ever having a rehearsal. So I had 2 hours with the stage management team to kind of go over blocking quickly before the show, and then they put me in some shake and go wig because I hadn't had a wig made for me yet, and I like like they didn't even have costumes ready for me yet, so I was just like wearing random costumes that weren't quite ready, and I made my debut, and I don't remember a fucking thing about it. Like I blacked out pretty
Yeah.
much.
But what a way to like make your Broadway debut, hungover in Hair as Claude. Like it kind of like I think that like weirdly like cosmically worked if you think about
For
it.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you
Yeah.
go to London with the production or did you stay in New York?
I did not go to London with the production. They wanted me to,
Mhm.
um, as a swing. I remember they like were offering everyone their same roles in London. And I was 21 and I was workshopping new musicals. I
Mhm.
was finally getting like my name out there. People were starting to know who I was. And so I said no to them because I knew that like if I went to London, I would be off stage in a in a different country, and I'm not a British equity member, so I couldn't be auditioning for things over there because that's not how it works. So in my head, I was like, I will lose this 6 months to a year of my life in terms of like progressing my career. It would be cool. I'd live in London. It'd be pretty cool. But when I came back from London, it would be like starting at square one. So
Yeah.
I decided to not. And they tried to convince me to go. They got Gavin Creel to like me to come to his dressing room for like a little private meeting where they tried to get him to convince me to go because they really wanted to keep our original cast intact. And as I just told Gavin, I was like, Gav, like you know the position that I'm in, and
Mhm.
I'm getting asked to do readings and workshops, and I'm meeting with other creatives, and I this I want to progress my career past being an understudy. So thanks, but no thanks, you know.
Yeah.
So they all went away, and I stayed back on Broadway and continued swinging. And so did Paris and Nicole. There were a few people that stayed back that did not go to London. But yeah, I think that was a really important move for me. Because then Catch Me If You Can happened, and that was
Yeah.
my second Broadway show, and I was actually a standby. So I went from
Yeah.
swing understudy to standby. So it was a bit of an upgrade
Yeah.
in terms
Did
of
you ever get
contractual.
to go on for Catch Me If You Can?
Nah.
Oh, I was gonna say, because like you have Aaron Tveit. I will admit I did not see that show. It's one of those shows where it's like I'll see it and then it closed. So
Right.
I mean you
It was a
had
tough season. We were
yeah,
up against Book of Mormon that year, so it was a really tough season.
yeah. I just know
Yeah.
Norman, so
Ugh,
that matters because it's Norbert Leo Butz and he's great.
God, I love him.
Yeah.
I learned so much from him just watching him rehearse. He's like one
So
of my
let's talk
heroes.
about Catch Me If You Can. So you went from swing to standby and like everyone's favorite, one of Broadway's heartthrobs, I guess we can call him because people love
Sure.
Aaron Tveit so much. So
He's a hottie.
he's pretty good. He can sing too. So
He can.
yeah, yeah.
He
I
really
just
can.
remember like I was sitting in bed, I was like, oh shit, he's going to Moulin Rouge tonight. I don't have time to go. It was like last week or 2 weeks ago he went on with 2 hours
Right.
notice. Yeah. Anyway, so what was that experience like doing standby work? And if you can tell the people who are listening who don't really know what standbys do, I mean, I do, but like sometimes,
Sure.
don't know.
Essentially, a standby is hired to cover like the leading role.
Yeah.
So like there are not often standbys in shows, but like Christine in Phantom of the Opera has like a standby, even has an alternate,
Yeah.
right? Like
I
Hair
think,
didn't need a standby.
I think Wicked has standbys for Alphaba
Yeah,
and
correct. I think that the like when the producers was on Broadway, like those two leads had standby. So it's
yeah.
a person hired to cover one role.
Mhm.
And it's a principal, right? So
Yeah.
that's the only job you're there for. And it's a principal contract, right? So it's a bit of a pay bump from being an ensemble understudy contract.
Yeah.
Um, I it was a great experience. You know, it was when I did Hair, it was I came into it for Broadway. So they'd already done it in the park. So most everyone that did the show in the park knew each other. There's also a revival. So when I came into it for Broadway, they were like just kind of rejudging what they did at the Delacorte, and I got to be there to watch that process. For Catch Me If You Can, it was a new musical, and yes, they had done an out of town tryout with it, but it was kind of watching a group of artists come together to create a new piece of theater. Um, and that's why Norbert sticks out in my head as someone that I learned so much from because Norbert is one of the smartest people I've ever seen in a creative space because he speaks his mind and he knows what he's talking about. He's very good at what he does. He's a two-time Tony winner. Like, so
Yeah.
I remember there being some like tough conversations between Norbert and the directing team about how things should go. Um, and it kind of got a little like spicy at moments. And I was just like on the sidelines, just like watching it all unfold as a 21-year-old, 22-year-old. And you know, it turns out Norbert was right. You know, like the reviews came out, and we weren't really a hit, and then Norbert won the Tony, and so like it's kind of funny being privy to those conversations and realizing like the power that an actor can have in a room. It is collaborative, right? When I was younger, I thought, okay, director's at the top of the pyramid and everyone's underneath them, and that was kind of the way I thought about the business, about creating musical theater. And producers are untouchable, like don't even try, and as I've
Yeah.
grown up and understood the world a bit more, we're all collaborators and we're on the same playing field, on the same level. And so that was a really great lesson that Norbert taught me, in terms of trusting instincts and communication and collaboration.
Yeah.
I did not get to go on for Aaron. We got our closing notice like 2 months before we closed. And when it happened, I was like, oh my God, I'm never going on. I could just tell. I don't know. Aaron's a workhorse. Aaron never misses. I guess I could have gone to his dressing room and been like, hey, Aaron, can you like give me a Wednesday matinee? But, I think, I don't know. It just didn't happen for me. I'm really trying to convince the Muni to do uh Catch Me If You Can, so I can finally play the role. And I could only really play the role these days at the Muni because it's so huge. I can maybe I can read 17 from that far away.
Like,
Because it's
just
not
do
really
like a
happening
lot
anymore.
of Botox and like facial
Yeah,
serums, like face
that's right.
feel, maybe a little facelift here and there.
That's right.
No. But it's interesting that you were talking about the collaborative thing because you've been doing this for so long. And you don't have to name what it is, whatever, but have you had experiences that you walked into a room where it wasn't as collaborative as you thought, where it was literally just like how you originally thought it was like the director and then the producers and then everyone else?
Yeah, yeah, there was a piece that I did, um where I was making choices in the room, choices that I thought were, smart, the active,
Mhm.
um, world building, and the director really didn't like it. And yet the people behind the table, the writers, the composers, I could tell that they were liking the work that I was doing, right? So it was like, and it was a director that hadn't really done a musical before, and I like that's my like wheelhouse, like musicals are what I know how to do. So
Yeah.
that was a process that was a bit like, ugh, um, because I didn't I didn't trust the director.
Mm.
So I was doing things instinctively to try to make the piece better, and I was being supported by the people writing it while the director was over here not knowing what was going on. So yeah, there have been moments like that. And I've even gotten myself in trouble, I guess, like because of what I learned from Norbert. Like I never want to be a problem child. I never want to create issues that don't exist. But if and when I do feel strongly about something, I do speak my mind, and I think that it has maybe given me a reputation in certain spaces as someone hard to work with. But um, that's just that's something that I've had to work with my therapist on. And I'm learning how to pick my battles these days.
Well, I always say it's also how you say things to people too, you know?
That part,
Yeah. So, I mean,
for sure.
I I work in medical as my real job. And
Mm.
there are certain ways that I find how I say things to be like, I ironically, before we had this meeting, I was in therapy and I
Me
my
too.
why are we the same person? Uh, so no, I said to my therapist, I was like, yeah, with dealing with medical records, like we get these requests and things aren't even in the chart. So I just had to tell them like, hey, just so you know, next time for future, like we can send it unless something's in the chart. You just have to be like fucking nice about it. And I worked as a concierge for six and
Right.
a half years and like, girl, I got stories. Um,
That's right.
I actually got to
I'll bet
see
you do.
yeah, well, I saw you in On the Town because we got free tickets for that. And I fucking
Boom.
loved that show so much. I
Too.
I just it was so joyful. but we'll get into it. Um,
Sure.
and my body just hurts now just by thinking of all the dancing because now I'm old and even like walking like a mile hurts my back and my hips and my lower half because aging is great. It's really great, but your body doesn't agree with it. um,
That's right.
yeah, but
That's right.
anyway, back to what you were saying. I also think it's a matter of how you say things to people as well. And I do agree that
Yeah.
it's, you know, in an environment of like working with creatives, it's a matter of trusting people. And I think it's also open
Hmm.
communication. And this is also like
Hmm.
solely based on like during the pandemic when I directed virtual readings. Like
Right.
that's all that was.
For sure.
Yeah, and I think it's also like if you hire the right people who know what they're doing and what they're talking about, that's also another aspect of it.
Yeah. Well, and in my 20s, particularly in my early 20s, when I was figuring out how to be a creative in these spaces, at this level, I think a lot of it was just me reacting, right? I wasn't really thinking, I was just like doing. So now that I'm like in my 30s and I've been around the block a few more times, you're right. It's the approach. It's how you communicate, not what you're communicating.
Yeah.
And I really Michael Arden is the best at this particular thing. The way that I've studied Michael Arden throughout this parade process, he's truly one of the greatest visionaries the American theater has ever seen, but his his true magic is in the room, in the rehearsal room, and who he hires for different positions, and like the warm, open, free, creative, collaborative space that he creates while making art. It's he's the real deal
Do you think it's
for sure.
because he started as an actor?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, all of my favorite directors were actors, right? So they know so much more how to talk to an actor. I think that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah,
Um, yeah,
I think
for
so too.
sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And his Once on this Island, I saw it its closing week, and I just remember posting on Facebook, like, why is this show closing? It was incredible.
It was wild. Everything he's done is gold.
Yeah.
Gold.
I will say I do have a friend who worked at the theater at the time, and they were just very much looking forward to not having to clean up after the sand. So he's like, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
He's like, their sand
Oh,
is
for sure.
I have a friend who was a dresser. I got to meet the goats. It was great. Saw the chickens
Oh, how fun.
backstage, met Tamira Gray in the back of my mind. I was like American Idol. So yeah,
That's right.
yeah, it was great. I'm trying to remember, like,
So
he's done
fun.
so much. He's like such a well-deserved Tony too, because we'll talk about Parade. I'm getting sidetracked. So anyway, back
Sure.
to collaboration and all that stuff. So I'm just looking
Hmm.
at my list. Hands on a Hardbody. How did that come into your life?
Mm. That came into my life. I remember getting a call when I was on vacation, and I had to fly back early from my vacation to do this workshop of this new musical based on a documentary film about Texans trying to win a pickup truck, right? So, um, and it came about because Nick Blameyer, if you know who Nick is, he also wrote Glory Days. Um,
I'm like envisioning him in my head right now.
yeah, he also did.
He was also in
God,
your rated R so stuff too, right? Mr. Sharp? Or am I like
maybe
making that up in my head?
was he? I don't remember. He's a composer, actor.
Yeah.
Maybe he did that off-Broadway show at MCC about like the dogs,
Yeah.
like the
One,
puppet
yes.
dogs.
I think it's
Is
him.
that Nick?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So Nick had been workshopping the role that I played in Hands on a Hardbody before me, but he got some television film opportunity or some other thing that made him to where he couldn't actually do this particular workshop. So they called me in to replace Nick for this one reading. Um, and I walked into this workshop being maybe the only actual born and raised Texan in a show about Texans. And so like I brought this wild authenticity to the role that made the creative team be like, yeah, we're keeping that, guys. So I got to keep the role when it went to La Jolla Playhouse, and then we got great reviews at La Jolla, and it became my very first like principal role on Broadway. Just my first on stage role, which was exciting.
Yeah,
And it
and
was
a
also
reunited.
Texas.
Yeah, and you reunited with hair alum Allison Case,
Oh,
right? Am I saying the last name correctly?
yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Love her.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just had a 10th anniversary. Oh my God. A 10th anniversary concert of Hands on a Hardbody 54 Below a few weeks back that I couldn't be a part of because of parade. But after we had like a 7 o'clock show that night, and they had a 9:30 performance at 54 Below. So I like ran to 54 Below so I could like catch as much of the concert as possible and reconnect with all my old buddies.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that was a cool experience. And also we only ran on Broadway for like 2.5, 3 months or something like that. So when we got that closing notice, it hit me pretty hard. That was a pretty rough one. But if it hadn't happened that way, On the Town would never have come
Yeah.
my way. So it's always
Let's talk about On the Town because like I convulsed earlier, I loved it so much. It was so fun. So how did that come into your life? Because it mixed like three of your strengths, dancing, acting, singing. Got to perform again with like Alicia Umphris.
um On the Town came my way because when we were getting nervous about Hands on a Heart Body closing, so like we had like a meeting, like
Mhm.
everyone come to the theater before half hour. We're having a company meeting. We thought we were getting our closing notice that day, but that was our producers letting us know that we weren't doing well. They're doing everything they can to keep us open. We're like hemorrhaging money, blah 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 blah. So once we had that meeting, my agents were like, okay, we're gonna get on this. So the first audition I got after that initial meeting was for On the Town at Barrington Stage Company. And so, I begrudgingly went in for this audition, being like, okay, great, let's go back to the regions and like audition for a summer stock show where I've got to like dance for my supper again. Like
Yeah.
um what's funny is that a lot of people didn't realize I was a dancer. Because after a chorus line and then being cast as a swing and then being cast as a standby, like the
Yeah.
business very much wanted to keep me in that box. They wanted me to be an ensemble dancer that covers leads because they knew I could. And
Yeah.
so for a few years, I refused to go in for any dance calls. I even got cast as Daniel Radcliffe's understudy in How to Succeed in Business. Turned it down because I didn't want to be seen as an ensemble understudy. Um, so when I got to On the Town, everyone at Barrington Stage Company was like, "You dance?" I was like, "Haha, yes, I do." So I got it right. The Hands on Hardbody closed, and I got On the Town. And it was amazing. Like Elizabeth Stanley, Tony Yazbek, Clyde Alves, Alicia Umphris, Nancy Opal, like the
Yeah.
legends were out there doing this, summer stock gig. And it was lightning in a bottle because some New York Times critic came up and saw it and gave us wild, wild raves. And then a producer picked us up, and all of a sudden I was playing my very first leading role on Broadway,
Yeah.
which was very cool.
Yeah. Pretty like decent sized theater too.
Oh my God, a
Yeah.
barn. That thing was
Yeah.
huge.
I just remember like it's all coming back to me, the scene with Elizabeth Stanley and Clive Elvis in the museum, and you have like the moving dinosaur bones. I feel like if you
Right?
haven't seen the show and I'm saying moving dinosaur bones, they're like, what the fuck?
I know. It was wild. I was also like the hardest year of my life just in terms of like physical upkeep, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
was wearing I was wearing like volleyball knee pads underneath my sailor costume because I was doing so many pratfalls and like
Mhm.
knee drops.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, physical therapy was on a regular basis. I had like massage therapy weekly. I was like coming home and just like eating steaks like at 11 p.m. at night just to like try to maintain. some
Yeah.
sort of like
Yeah.
body fat.
Well, it's not, you weren't 21 on tour anymore. You're a little bit older now and not on tour.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
So I wanted to, because you mentioned how the the what the industry likes to pigeonhole people into certain
Mm,
types of stuff. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that? Because, going, I don't, and I mentioned this a couple of times whenever I interview somebody on the podcast. So, like during the pandemic with these virtual readings, when I would work with musical theater performers, we would talk about why they wanted to do a play. And they said, well, it's a play. If you're musical theater, you don't really get offered plays as much. Do you want to talk a little
right.
bit more to that? And maybe you have any advice or what you found kind of helps break away from the pigeonhole?
Yeah. Um, I growing up, like one of my favorite actors was like Johnny Depp.
Mhm.
Another one of my favorite actors was like Jim Carrey, right? These are like actors that are just as proficient in comedy as they are in drama. They've played villains as well as ingenues. Um, so this idea, also my idea around like music, I've always been eclectic. Like there's not just one type of music I like. I like country, I like rock, rap and roll, rock and roll,
Rap
rap,
and roll.
you know.
Listen, that could be like a part of the what is it, Midsummer Night's Dream, rap and roll.
I think Wrap and Roll is actually the name of a hair product that I use to make my curls come out. Anyway, so this it's something that I've always strived for in my career. I never want to be able to have the industry put me in a box. So when the industry does put me in a box, I actually tell the industry, sorry, I don't fit in a box. So
Yeah.
I've been pretty lucky that most of the roles that have come my way have been vastly different from any other thing that I've done previously. And I've made that a goal of mine. And it really is, I guess it really is the actor's job to tell the industry what you will and will not do,
Yeah.
right? I mean, like I could have very well paid off my student loans 10 years earlier and jumped from Broadway show to Broadway show to Broadway show as an ensemble dancer that understudied the lead and had a thriving career whilst doing so. But I knew it wasn't what was going to make me happy or make me excited to show up to work every day. So I told the industry what I was going to do and what I was going to be. And if that meant taking a major pay cut to do more off Broadway things and more regional things to build my resume as a leading player, then that's what it meant, right? So I lived in bumfuck Queens for a few years, paying $500 in rent for a closet in order to make that happen for myself. So yeah, it's kind of know thyself, I guess, is really um, and I know I come from a major place of oh my God!
Are you
Are you
okay?
still there? Yeah, I just kicked
Are
my
you
iPad
okay?
over. Oh, I'm totally fine. I just kicked my iPad over.
Oh no, it's fine. I didn't want your iPad broke for a second.
That was wild.
It's so dramatic, but it was so great. It's the first time I've had like a couple of firsts in my podcasting, but like it's just like the most dramatic iPad fall.
Oh, that was
Oh,
fun.
that was great. Okay.
What was I
So
saying?
bumfuck Queens, 500 a month. You did what you needed to do to, because it is true, because if you look at your resume, everything is so different. And you also did a lot of concerts, like you did the Philharmonic, Sweeney
Mm,
Todd. I think Emma Thompson was in that one, right? Like
mhm.
Queen Emma Thompson. Like, let's just talk about Emma
Queen.
Thompson for a few minutes. What was that like working with her?
Oh my God. Well, here's how that came about. Like this off-Broadway show the world that you're a leading player thing. Um, I got cast in Working off
Mhm.
Broadway at Prospect Theater Company at 59 East 59th Street Studios. Um, and that particular cast, I got to work with Lin-Manuel Miranda, who was a writer on it. I got to work with Steven Schwartz, who was a writer on it. We were making, I don't know, $400 a week doing this thing.
Yeah.
And it got really great reviews, and we ended up winning a Drama Desk Award, the Ensemble Award, at the Drama Desks that year. And Lonnie Price happened to come to a performance of it and really enjoyed me in that show, so that when he was asked to direct Sweeney Todd at the New York Philharmonic, he knew me from this like very non-lucrative off-Broadway show I did. And that's how I got an audition for Sweeney Todd. So I was up against God, Justin Guarini, myself, and another actor. I want to say Jeff Packard. So it was us three up for Anthony. I was like, okay, well, Justin Guarini's an American Idol. He's got it in the bag. It's all right. I'm glad I'm at least being considered.
Yeah.
But I studied since I was a vocal major at NYU, like classical voice was kind of the basis of what I did. That's
Yeah.
a lot of my education vocally. So I think I was able to access more of that like Sondheim classical thing, which is maybe why I got it. I don't know. I was a cigarette smoker from like age 15 to age 27. Age 27 was when I got cast in Sweeney Todd at the New York Philharmonic, and I realized I was going to be sharing the stage with Audra McDonald and Emma Thompson and world-renowned baritone Bryn Terfel and Christian Borle, and to name a few. So I stopped smoking cigarettes at age 27 the day we started rehearsals for Sweeney Todd.
Just to be like, I can't go out for a cigarette break, or I just need to like vocally be there.
I need to vocally be there. I need to stop fucking around. Like, this is the New York Phil. Like, you're gonna be at Lincoln Center. They're gonna film this for PBS. Like,
Yeah.
it's time to get serious.
Mhm.
So 2 weeks before we started rehearsals, the New York Phil had set me up with a dialect coach
Mhm.
because it's set in London town. So I worked with this dialect coach for a couple weeks before we came in, and that dialect coach didn't necessarily set me up for success because they had me learn a very received pronunciation, very RP British accent. So when I got into rehearsals, Emma Thompson was quite confused with the work I had done on my dialect, because I think her words were, "You're you're not the British Queen, you're a bloody sailor," I believe is what she told me. So on 10-minute breaks, she was taking notes on my scene work, and on 10-minute break she would call me over and go over sounds with me. Emma fucking Thompson, like Oscar winner, was taking time out of her breaks to make sure that my dialect was up to snuff with what she wanted it to be, right? So like that's the core of who Emma was to me. She was, one, the kindest, two, the funniest, and three, the most generous,
Yeah.
right? Like the way she led a room, um, she was so gracious to every single person. I think that there was another show that was rehearsing like the floor below us, and she like brought them meat pies one day just to be like, "I'm Emma Thompson and here are meat pies, enjoy." So she was just so fucking cool and kind, and you know it's good stuff.
Did you enjoy her as Trunchbull and Matilda?
Oh yeah, genius.
Yeah.
I enjoyed Matilda. God, I thought it was so good.
So like nobody was talking or enough about how great the Matilda musical
I
is.
know.
Like
I
it's
know.
not, I was like, how is this not nominated for like anything? It was so good. Totally
It was very
sidetracked.
good
Yeah.
for sure. Yep. Matilda on Broadway happened the same year as Hands on a Hardbody, which also happened to be the same year as Kinky Boots. So
Yeah.
like that was
And
that was
Rob
another
McClure is
season.
everyone's introduction to the brilliance that is Rob McClure. So
Oh,
yeah.
love that man.
Yeah. Saw him in Chaplin a few times. Well, I used to do merchant shows, so that was like one of the shows that we had. So I
Oh,
just like
nice.
sneaked in
For sure.
to see him do his Chaplin-y thing. So we
Yeah,
were
he was
talking.
my Cornelius in Hello
Oh,
Dolly at the Muni.
yeah, he's done a couple of Muni things.
Yeah, he's a Muni guy.
Yeah, for sure. Now we're just gonna like talk about people that aren't you. So let's talk about other people you worked with. So I saw one of my best friends yesterday, and she knew I was interviewing you. And I said, "Do you have a question I should ask him?" She goes, "No." She goes, "Well, you should ask him, what was it like working on Sex in the City too?" So let's talk about it because you were there when Liza Minnelli enters.
Oh my God, was I ever?
Yeah.
That was super fun because I think I was doing hair at the time.
Oh, wow.
Um, because the hair and makeup team had no idea what to do with my hair on set. And so if you really look closely, um I think I have two different hairstyles in the same freaking scene because I had two different stylists for two different shoot days. It was wild. It was fun. I was super happy to be considered one of like the Broadway boys that they were casting to be in this chorus. It was 2 weeks of shooting. It wasn't my first television film thing, but no, was it? Yes, it was. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
Okay, great.
But I met a lot of friends, Max von Essen and Nick Adams, all these boys that went on to like really great careers. We were all like, the gay men's chorus at this wild gay wedding. And I mean, it was all so gay. And then out comes Liza fucking Minnelli doing single ladies in front of us for an entire 8-hour day. Um, she was so nervous, sweet Liza. Um, that she had to keep stopping in the middle of takes um for some reason, and then I like caught her. We were in a soundstage indoors somewhere in Brooklyn, and I could just caught her like smoking cigarettes like it was like chain smoking cigarettes between takes. But yeah, I got to dance with Kim Cattrall, and yeah, it was a wild time.
Yeah. Well, thank you for indulging my friend's question and
Absolutely.
giving us the behind the scene details about Liza Minnelli because, you know,
Yeah. Ugh,
it's Liza with a Z. So you also
that's
were
right.
on Quantico for 3 seasons. How did Quantico come into your life?
Quantico came into my life because of On the Town, I think. I mean, Josh Safran, who is a showrunner, he's done Gossip Girl, he's done Smash, he did Quantico, the new Gossip Girl. He's been around the television film world and is a Broadway aficionado. And so I think that Josh had seen me in a couple of Broadway shows. And so when they were casting for Quantico, I guess when my agents submitted me for it, they saw me because of my work on Broadway. So I auditioned for a role on like when Quantico first started. I went in, I had a callback, I went back in for a producer session, and that did not go my way, but I felt really great about my audition. I went to another actor. And then a few months later, they wrote a new role onto the show, went in for that, one audition, booked it. Didn't even have to go in for a callback or for a producer session. So that's kind of how it came about. The role, is like someone that's like on the spectrum of autism, highly intellectual rocket scientist, computer hacker guy. So like talking fast and avoiding eye contact and being nervous was like part of the job. So I could kind of be nervous because I was nervous to be on
You
set
just
with
like
Priyanka
channel
Chopra.
your
And
inner Liza Minnelli on Sex and the City 2
that's right.
while
That's
playing.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
So
chain
it really was
smoking.
just like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just like memorize lines and say them as fast as you can and don't make eye contact with anyone. And
Yeah.
like it was really fun. I learned so much about what it meant to be
Mm.
on camera, and just the technique of TV film acting is just it's so different than the world of theater. Watching Priyanka in particular was really kind of a masterclass because she's been doing it for so long, and she was very sweet. She was very kind to me. It was a wild ride, that Quantico. So many actors in the principal cast were like LA kids that were like on the East Coast. We were living in Montreal shooting the first season, and everyone was in such a bad mood. No one wanted to be there. Um, and I was just very confused as to how these people who were making so much money on a television show could be so miserable. I guess it was pretty cold in Montreal in November, December, January, February, March. But I I came from the world of Broadway, where if I wanted coffee, I walked my happy ass to Starbucks and I got a coffee. And then all of a sudden, I was being escorted from my gorge hotel to my trailer at the studio, and people were bringing me almond milk lattes and avocado toast with fried eggs on. I mean, it's like lavish, like the way TV film works. It's like
Yeah.
I was thanking people for bringing me their coffee, and they were calling me the nice one. I was like, "What? How is just thanking you for bringing me my breakfast in the morning being nice? You're being nice, right?" So it was a bit of a. I was pretty shell shocked in terms of the culture of
Yeah.
television film. It's such a an insular, separated experience, right? You're like in your trailer and you're preparing and you're learning your lines and you're going to the hair and makeup trailer and you're getting all done up. And then you go to set and it's like, all right, we rehearse it once, we shoot it as many times as we need, and we move on, right? There's
Yeah.
the collaboration, the being in the same room, the it's just so different from theater. Um, I enjoyed it as an art form. I don't enjoy it as much as theater because it's less connective.
Mhm.
Um, but I really enjoyed how challenged I was because it was such a different world from what I'm used to. And the money I was making was wild, and it allowed me to kind of uh, pursue other creative endeavors that I hadn't been able to previously because of financial situations.
Would that include your Sanderson Sisters Halloween theme show?
You know it would.
Hey, well, that's such a perfect segue. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm more of like a holiday season, Christmas season type of person. So I
Right.
understand everyone's obsession with Hocus Pocus, how they watch it every year,
Right.
how like all the things. It's just like, it's not my thing, although I do enjoy Halloween.
Sure.
I love the aspect of it. But how were you like a huge Halloween person? Well, I mean, you're an actor, you dress up for a living. So
Sure.
just talk about the creation of it.
Yeah. Halloween has always been one of my favorite days of the year as a child. I mean, I really went for it as a kid. I was a clown for like 6 years straight. I don't know. There was something about clowns that I was obsessed with as a child. And then as I got older, the clowns got scarier, because a boy in Texas I couldn't be like a flouncy, colorful clown. I had to be like a bloody clown. Um, but yeah, I love Halloween. I love dressing up. I love pretending to be a different thing. For that one night, I guess it was very directly related to maybe some escapism and some artistry and maybe a bit of drag as
Yeah.
well. Um, Hocus Pocus was always one of my favorite movies. I found it to be wildly hilarious. I still think that it's Bette Midler, Sarah Jessica Parker, and Kathy Najimy's best work they've ever done. It's very drag, even though they're females playing
Yeah,
females.
First Wives
Uh,
Club is like also up there. So
correct, correct. It's so true. But yeah, there's something about that movie that just like got me as a kid. I was fucking obsessed with it. I can literally quote every single line top to bottom. And I'm not the only person on the planet apparently that has that affinity.
yeah.
So I always knew that I wanted to be the Sanderson sisters for Halloween, but like I didn't want to half-ass it. Like I wanted to be able to pull it off in a way that was like, okay, this is it. So after the first season of Quantico, I had a lot of money in the bank and I was really kind of wanting to um, produce, to do my own things, to like, I don't know, I always wanted to do like a big solo show. And so I produced a solo show at 54 Below and I
Which
did
the album
three.
is out and you can find it on all of the music streaming services.
That's right. Jay Armstrong Johnson live at Feinstein's 54 Below. It's a mouthful, but it's there.
I just wrote
Um,
debut album 54 Below. That's my note of it.
so yeah, that was the April after I finished shooting
Mhm.
Quantico in 2016. Um, So yeah, I wanted to kind of show my love for music, my eclectic approach to music. So every single song on that album and in that show is vastly different from every other song. I tried to make sure I hit every musical genre ever, so that like there was kind of a oral resume of sorts. So like if and when casting directors are looking to cast me in literally anything. I can show them a rock song, I can show them a pop song, I can show them a country song, I can show, so that there's at least that lives there. But Halloween came about because we were dropping the album in the fall of that following year. So we recorded it, we mixed it, we mastered it, and then it was going to be dropping in October. And so I was like, well, what if we made it a Halloween album release party? And if we do that, then we can all dress up like Hocus Pocus characters because it's my dream. And so, like, I spent all my money on custom costumes, Sanderson Sisters costumes and wigs and hired makeup artists. And I just made it a Halloween party. So we did a lot of songs from my album as the Sanderson Sisters and Billy Butcherson and other characters from Hocus Pocus, and added a few like Halloween tunes just for fun. And we had so much fun that we just decided to do it every year. And that was around that time I started working with Broadway Cares, doing things like Broadway Bears and Broadway Backwards. And I really started forming really great relationships with that organization and that philanthropy. So I pitched it to Broadway Cares in our like third or fourth year, and it took them no, there's third year. In the third year, and then it took them till the fourth or fifth year to actually come on board as our benefactor, because I was kind of playing with fire and that I was using Hocus Pocus, which I didn't own the IP to, and I was really kind of nervous that I was going to get a takedown notice from Disney one day. So I thought if I don't make this fundraising event soon, then I'm going to get shut down.
So wow, I can't speak English apparently. Continuing on this year as well.
It is, yeah. I'm already deep in production meetings for it. We're having it at Sony Hall again. We've not been announced quite yet, so that the announcement should be coming, I think, within the next few weeks. I think
Well, you
tickets are going
kind
to
of
go on sale
announced it a
pretty
little
soon.
bit now, but we don't have a date release announcement. So,
That's right. That's
so
right.
kind of an
So it is happening.
Mhm.
It will be back at Sony Hall, and this year we're actually benefiting the Ali Forney Center,
Mhm.
um, which we're really quite excited about. Because they are the premier organization that takes in homeless LGBTQ youth around the country, particularly up here in New York. And LGBTQ homelessness is up 10% this year because of all the anti-LGBTQ legislation. So we're really excited and charged to be partnering with the Ali Forney Center to raise as much money for a very, very, very worthy and important cause this year.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to give you this invitation now live on the recording. If you want to come back in the fall and talk about it on the podcast, you're more than welcome to.
Oh, hell yeah. That sounds
Yeah,
great.
for sure. You can be
I'd
like
love
my
to.
first return guest. Maybe we'll like dress up in Halloween gear. Nobody will
Oh,
see
heck yeah.
it. We'll just look at each other. I'll just go
Oh,
without
it's
any
on.
makeup and I'll be like, ah, just joking. So it's interesting how you were saying that, with casting directors with my album, you can see all of my different vocal ranges. And you did mention earlier how
Mm,
that you are a little bit more classically trained
mm.
than people might think. So that brings us to Phantom of the Opera.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Look at these transitions that are happening without even knowing.
Nailing it.
So how did
Nailing it, Allison.
I try? Thank you. How did Phantom come into your life?
Phantom came into my life because of Hal Prince. Um, if it wasn't for working, I would have never gotten Sweeney Todd. And if it wasn't for Sweeney Todd, I would have never gotten Candide. And if it wasn't for Candide, I would have never gotten Phantom. Right. So um all of those things are very wildly connected. Um, Quantico canceled the show after the third season. I only did one episode in the third season, and then they clocked me across the jaw, put me in jail, and never brought me back. So then it got canceled, and all of a sudden I was living in a one-bedroom apartment by myself. My TV show got canceled and I had no means to like really pay for that one bedroom and I freaked out. But because I had met Hal Prince through Candide and he became a mentor of mine, like brought me into his family, like invited me to all their Christmas parties and dinners. I mean, I was all of a sudden rubbing elbows with like the people I had studied my entire life, right? It was a very weird, cool time. So I remember going to coffee with Megan Pacherno, who played my Cunegonda and Candide, and just kind of belly aching about the future and how nervous I was. And she was like, call Hal, see what advice Hal has. He's in your back pocket. He's dad. So
Yeah.
I did. I just called Hal and told him my predicament and how nervous I was, and I was gonna have to move out of my apartment, and I wasn't sure what I was gonna do. And Hal was like, "Well, they're looking for replacements for Raoul on Broadway. Let me make a phone call." So he called the casting of Phantom, and the next day I had an audition for Phantom of the Opera. And I had to go in like 3 or 4 different times. I had to sing for my supper and really kind of, you know, audition for it. And they filmed my last audition and they sent the tape off to Cameron McIntosh and Andrew Lloyd Webber over across the pond and got me approved. And there I was in my fifth Broadway show, and able to stay in my apartment and keep my head afloat financially, all thanks to Hal Prince.
What is that like replacing in a Broadway show that's been running for 30 years at that point?
Yeah, it was the first time that I really experienced that. I have to plug in my iPad. Let me make sure it's is it charging? Sorry. Um, yeah, I had only done original casts up to that point, so it really was different. I guess the thing that was working in my favor was that Hal Prince kind of told the team at Phantom of the Opera, like, I know that Jay is not this stereotypical Raoul that we would cast in Phantom, but he's like, but I like this. He'll bring something new to the role and essentially um, allow him to do so, right? So the Hal Prince
Yeah.
was telling the team that put me into it, like, let Jay do what he does, um, which was nice. It was validating, but it was still hard because it had been running for 30 years at that point, and so many cooks in the kitchen. I was getting a lot of contradictory notes from this person and then from that person. So it got a bit tricky. I mean, I literally stopped rehearsal one day after getting another contradictory note, and I had one of my like J moments where I maybe didn't communicate this as nicely as I could have, but I literally told them that they were wasting my time. I was like, you creative team people need to figure out what you want because I'm not going to be told to do something different every time I step into a rehearsal. So whatever it is, let me know what it is, but I'm not going to be doing a different show every time there's a different creative person at the show. Like, and that's kind of I think that's what happens with the machines, the Wickeds, the Phantoms, the Lion Kings of the world. I think that they all have this kind of in common. Because all the creatives that will just fly in for a day or two to know the show and then fly back out will have a different version of the show that they think that it should be, as opposed to like this music director or that music director or this resident director or that, So it was challenging, but really, really cool. There's nothing more exciting than to be on stage during Masquerade and to feel like that history and that energy. Um, yeah, I had a good time.
It just like that you mentioned Masquerade, and ironically, because you're currently performing at the Jacobs, I just remember my friends and I went to see once, and the Majestic and the Jacobs and the Golden share an alleyway. So
Right.
I don't remember at what point of once, but we're sitting where were we sitting? We were sitting right orchestra, like by the doors, and then we just hear a very muffled Masquerade while we're watching once. And we're like, we're getting two shows for the price of one right now. So
Yeah,
yeah. Did you get to
that
interact?
alleyway is
Yeah.
wild.
Did you get to interact with any of the mannequins on stage?
Not really. Raoul's track doesn't really go more than like two or three steps up,
Yeah.
so I didn't really get to spend too much time, at least in the staging of it,
Yeah.
you know. I saw him backstage a lot. The mannequins, those
Yeah.
creepy fucking mannequins.
Yeah. So you mentioned that Hal Prince is like, let him do his thing, like he'll bring something different to the role, which I'm sure you did. I did not see you in the show. I'm sorry. The last time I saw it was
It's
Norm
fine.
Lewis as the Phantom, which
Absolutely.
I think is fair because he's one of three people
Yes,
who I want to sing me to bed at night. Um,
that's correct.
thank you. Um, did so with bringing something different because Phantom has a very large fan base.
Mhm.
Did you feel the love from the Phantom fans spelt with a PH?
Sure. Yeah, I think I did. I got a lot of like fan art, a lot of I did feel a lot of love. Like I only spent a year and a half at Phantom, and by the time my year and a half was done, all of my walls were filled with fun Phantom fan art. And of course, I wasn't getting nearly enough fan art as like Christine and Phantom because, well, those are the two like
Yeah,
it's. But yeah, I felt the love from the Phantom peeps. They are a wild bunch.
yeah,
They're diehard. I found that to be really kind of exciting and new and terrifying at times. But yeah,
yeah.
uh, it was cool.
So before we get into parade, I want to talk a little quickly about Scotland, PA, because you got like a couple of nominations for that. And I mean, like,
Yeah.
it's kind of Shakespeare, but it's not, but it is
Oh, right.
Shakespeare.
It totally is.
It's
Yeah.
based on Macbeth. It's based on a movie. Again, another thing I missed because it was there and it went away. But what was it? Because also
Right.
like Brian McCartan, am I saying his last name correctly? Like he, I
I think so.
don't- sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, because I just saw clips of him as Tony in West Side Story and like, holy shit, like you don't realize like how
Yeah.
vocally great. I also saw him as Fiyero and he was fantastic.
Yeah. It's
Um,
very good.
shouting out another person in this podcast that you worked with. So
Love that boy.
yeah, how did that show come about? That's a really great theater that it was performed in as well.
Hmm.
Another
It came
iconic.
about
Yeah.
like the oh my iPad says it's losing its power. And I thought I plugged it in. Just a second.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, God, all right. Mhm. No. Sorry. I think I might need to plug this in real quick. No. Great.
Okay, so we're back. Scotland, PA, how did that come into your life?
Scotland, PA. I got an audition for it whilst doing Phantom of the Opera to do like a workshop of it. And it was right around a negotiation. They were re-upping my contract at Phantom, and so I did the workshop of Scotland, PA before my negotiations, and so my negotiations to stay in Phantom, there were a few workshops that I had done in my first 6 months to a year of doing Phantom where I like needed to make sure I wrote it into my contract for outs because I loved doing Phantom, but I really want to create roles. Like I want to do more original casts, and so Scotland, PA was one of those shows that I built into my Phantom contract, so that if it did go to production, regardless of what the production was, off Broadway, Broadway region,
Mhm.
that I'd be able to leave Phantom for it. So I did actually. I auditioned for Mac, which is the role that Ryan McCartney played. That's the one that I really wanted. Um, and then I guess when I went in, I mean, I had a great audition, but Lonnie Price, um, the director, kind of like clocked his head a bit and was like, gave me the material for Banco. and asked me to just like go out into the hallway and kind of make myself familiar with it and come back in. Um, and it kind of upset me because I like really prepared pretty hard for Mac and I really wanted to get the lead. And so I was like, okay, fine, whatever. So I went I went into the hallway and went over the Banco material. I was like, okay, he's a stoner. Okay, he's the comic relief. Okay, he's the best friend. Okay, whatever, let's go. So I just gave like a very I just didn't care about it all that much. I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna do a character, right? I'm just gonna come in with a strong choice and
Mhm.
see what happens. And I cracked up the whole entire room. And I think it's because I just didn't put any pressure on myself, like, and
Yeah.
that's not the first time that that's happened to me, going in for a certain role and then getting a different role because they like gave me that, so there's something about taking pressure off of yourself
Yeah.
when you're auditioning for something that really kind of, that's where magic happens. But God, I'm so happy that I got Banco because he's one of my favorite characters I've ever played. And I was able to play so much within him, and like the things that I found throughout the course of the run of Scotland, PA were just, it was wild. I don't know. He was a really well written character too. And it was so likable while being so stupid and so drunk and so stoned the whole show that it was just, it was really fun. And the industry kind of uh, fell in love with him as well. You mentioned that I got some nominations, and it was
You also are an
really
Outer
nice.
Critics honoree because of that as well.
Yeah.
To be like name dropping
Now,
everything, but you.
but yeah, then all of that, all of the awards situations, that was like all pandemic stuff, right? So like I'd done Scotland, PA, and then after that I did Darling Grenadine, but then after that was the pandemic when all the awards, that's the virtual awards. So like
Yeah.
in lockdown, I was able to go to all of these like virtual award ceremonies as like a nominee, which felt pretty cool.
Yeah. What was it like for you during lockdown? How did you stay creative? What did you do? Were you able to stay
Um,
creative?
I finally convinced Broadway Cares to be the benefactor of I Put a Spell on You in January of 2020. The pandemic hit us in March of 2020. So I realized that I wouldn't be able to do my Halloween show live and in person that year. And I'd finally gotten my like favorite, my organization that I wanted so badly on board. So during phase 4 of New York reopening from the pandemic, television and film came back,
Mhm.
right? So I had my eye on that. And so I thought, well, what if we did a virtual I Put a Spell on You? So that's really how I stayed creatively inspired through the pandemic, was on my feet learning how to produce a film for the first time. Um, I at least knew how to pull off I Put a Spell on You as like a live cabaret show extravaganza. Never in my life have I ever had to produce a film. I Put a Spell on You and I made each song into music videos. And we worked really hard on it, and pretty much everyone I asked to come on board to collaborate on that first virtual year of I Put a Spell on You said yes. And because everyone was like doing nothing and just in their houses and like creatively in a drought, everyone brought a weird, wild A game to this first virtual year, and we produced something that was so beautiful and so high production value, and we blew a lot of people out of the water with what we were able to produce, because that first year of the pandemic we were watching a lot of people perform from their living rooms and a lot of like low tech, like everyone was kind of getting
Again,
sick
I'm
of.
nodding because with these virtual, I am fully aware. Yeah.
I know you are.
Yeah.
So we wanted to make sure that we set ourselves apart from all of those things so that when people bought whatever the $35 ticket to our event, well, no,
Mhm.
it was a free event. It was a
Yeah.
free thing. We just wanted to really pack a punch, and I think we did.
Yeah.
We raised $250,000 for Broadway Cares
Okay.
that year. And we had so much fun. I mean, it was so nerve-wracking because, we were on sets, it was the middle of the pandemic. There wasn't a vaccine yet. We had to have COVID compliance managers, and we had to take all this training courses and follow all of the SAG-AFTRA rules of what it meant to be on set, and masks this and face shields that, and the makeup chairs lasted so much longer than they normally would have because of all of um, the health precautions that we had to take around eyes and mouths and makeup artists. And so I learned so much about what it meant to be a producer, particularly a television and film. And it's once you have it in the can, then you got to get it edited, and then once it's edited, then you got to get it color corrected, and all the while you're doing the sound design on it, and having people produce their own vocals from their own houses and hoping they have the right. It
Yeah.
was, to say I stayed creatively fulfilled. I wildly so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I kind of taught myself that I had the capacity to produce on that level. And I really kind of found a deep love for producing during the pandemic, that is now being carried over into post-pandemic world as well.
Do you want to talk about that a little bit more about what you have been producing?
Yeah, I mean, the Halloween show will be every single year, probably until I leave this earth. So we're already in production meetings. We're already planning for a bigger and better show. I'm starting a writer's room with a couple of my closest creative friends to figure out what new villains are going to be in the show this year, what new music mashups we're doing. Because the last few years we've been able to kind of recycle a lot of tunes because we had songs from the past and then songs from the pandemic and the album, and then we got to do a live show last year, so we got to take a lot of those music videos and translate them to a live stage. And so a lot of we've kind of they've run their I don't know, we've used a lot of those, so we need some
They've run
newness.
its course,
Course.
or its corpse, because we're talking Halloween.
Oh,
I just came up with it. Thank you. Hair.
really good,
Little.
Allison. Really
Thank
good.
you. I will say I love earlier when you were talking about Jim Carrey and Johnny Depp, how you mentioned how they play villains. You just literally did little mustache twirl. It's ooh. So, all right, now the time has come. Parade. This is, I will
Mm,
admit, I've heard of it. I saw it on Broadway. I loved it. But I am not one of those people who were obsessed with the musical. So I went in
mm,
kind of not, I knew the story, I knew what happened. I went in not really knowing the music, which I sometimes
sure.
actually like about a show. Um, but it's a very, very beloved, like, no, I don't want to say to a stalker obsessive level, but it's a very beloved musical. So how did Parade come into your life?
Yeah, I'm the same way. I didn't really know Parade growing up. It wasn't one of those cast albums that
Yeah.
I was listening to on a regular basis. My best friend Amanda, actually, it was one of her favorite cast albums growing up, and I don't know how we didn't cross-pollinate that as children, but she's been obsessed. Parade, she cites as one of her favorite musicals of all time.
How many times
I'd
has she
heard Old
seen
Red
him
Hills
in the show?
twice. She was there on opening night, and then she came in for a friend's wedding, so she saw it the day before the wedding as well. So, because she lives in Texas. But uh, Parade came about. I've been friends with Michael Arden, and his husband Andy Miensis for years. Andy and I were in final callbacks for the first national tour of Spring Awakening back when we were 19, 20 years old, around the same time that I got the A Chorus Line tour, because I was up for the same with both tours at the same time. And then Andy got Spring Awakening and I got A Chorus Line. So we've known each other for a long time. So I've known Michael as a friend, before I knew him as an artistic collaborator. But I remember Michael asked me to go to Tokyo last summer to do a 10th anniversary concert for the Theater Orb, in Tokyo, in Shibuya, with Norm Lewis and with Casey Levy and with Wilhelmine Verkijk, who's this incredible. She plays the German alphabet and German. She's the German leading lady in that part of the world. And it was so fun. It was amazing. Um, Great money, great songs. Um, and then I just remember Michael mentioning like, I'm thinking about you for a parade. I'm doing parade at City Center, and would you be interested in auditioning for it? And I was like, yeah, duh. He's like, "Yeah, okay, great. Then you'll get an audition. I'm thinking about you for Britt Craig, but like, if you didn't get Britt Craig, would you be interested in a smaller role?" He's like, I'm the director, but Jason Robert Brown's going to have a say, and so he's going to have to be okay with you. And so I had to sing for my supper. I had to put myself on tape, um, and I did. And I mean, I thank the universe for the Hal Prince of it all, because Hal and Jason are so well connected. I mean, Jason did wrote Parade when he was 23. And that's only because Stephen Sondheim had turned Hal down and said, no, I just wrote Passion. I can't write another like depressing musical. I need to write a comedy right now. So Jason Robert Brown only got Parade as a composer because Stephen Sondheim said no, which I find to be wild.
What a
But because
story
Hal and I,
too.
it's right.
I did not know that. That's crazy.
Yeah, isn't that wild?
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of Parade has been Jason like filling us in on stories about how Parade came about, and what Hal was he was the reason for it. Hal and Alfred Yuri were good friends, and Alfred Yuri was talking about Lucille and Leo Frank, the story, because Alfred grew up in Georgia and had heard about it his whole life, and Hal was like, "That's a musical. We need to write this," and so that's kind of how it came about. So yeah, I auditioned for it, and Jason Robert Brown co-signed me. I believe his words were, "Well, if we can get Jay Armstrong Johnson, why wouldn't we?" Which feels very, very nice. Um, and City Center was a whirlwind. I mean, we had less than 2 weeks to get the thing up on its feet, and it was received so well. And then we had another 2 weeks to get it ready for Broadway, and I can't believe we're closing in 4 weeks. That's pretty wild.
So let's talk about the city center process of doing encores, because
Mm.
I recently saw Light in the Piazza, and my friends and I were even talking
Right.
about it yesterday about like the process of putting it up. So you're performing at City Center, you're doing this huge production of a musical, and you even mentioned earlier, like you go to Muni, you have a week of rehearsal, and then you perform. So what is it like performing at City Center with like your 2 week rehearsal? Do you go in knowing the stuff already, or like how does that work for you?
It's kind of like summer stock, but in New York City, under the microscope of all of the New York City critics.
Sure.
It's terrifying, and it's evolved a bit from its original.
Mhm.
Like, this is a concert that we're on book for, and now it feels like every City Center show feels like an out of town tryout, but it's an in town tryout.
Yeah,
So,
I saw Into the Woods. I just saw Light in the Piazza.
hmm
And I realized
hmm
when I saw Piazza, and I could be wrong about this, I was like, why is she holding the book in like every scene? And I think it's because it was the script, but I could be wrong. But I think that's what it was.
Yeah, this I've done 3 encore shows now. Um, and in the clause of encore's contracts, you are allowed, if you want to, as an actor, to carry your script with you the whole damn time. They can't really tell you, you can like set it down for a moment of choreography, but you are
Yeah.
technically allowed as an actor to have that script with you on stage.
Yeah.
Um, Michael was really smart. 2 weeks before we started City Center, he wrote us this gorgeous email that was like, "I'm so happy you're on board. This is going to be an incredible process. Just want to let you know where I'm coming from. I think this story is important. I think that it's been a long time since it's been told, and I think that now more than ever it needs to be told. And I would appreciate it if we could be off book. I think that it will pack more of a punch. Just the way he said it is like a
Yeah.
lot more beautiful than what I'm
Yeah.
saying. But he essentially rallied our entire cast and crew around this idea of like, okay, we know we only have 2 weeks, but let's try to make this as fully realized as possible so that we give New York City like the most realized and important and um, version of the show that we possibly can. So that first read through of that first day at City Center rehearsal, Ben and Michaela were off book. They essentially didn't even look at the script.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's kind of these days, while you're allowed to have that script on stage, it could very well be your next Broadway show. So we really kind of rallied as a team and pulled it off. I don't know how, but we sure did.
Did you guys know during the run it was eventually going to go to Broadway, or was it like run ended, surprise, Broadway's happening?
I mean, it was received so well, and like, my friends that saw it at City Center after the show were just like, the kinds of things I was hearing was like, this was the most important piece of theater I've ever seen. I've never been so emotionally moved. Like that was gorgeous. So that there's not often that you get that kind of reaction from your friends and from industry folk and from every single critic that like writes about it. So the energy around it was super, super buzzy, right?
Yeah.
So of course we didn't know until like that offer came in, but it felt like, okay, well, if this doesn't transfer, like what are we doing here, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So what is it like performing the show on Broadway?
Um, I would say it's a highlight of my career, to be completely honest. Um, it's just such a beautiful show. The score is so fucking good. I mean, Jason won a Tony Award at age 24 for his score, which he deeply deserves. I mean, he should have won it again this year if that was even possible. Um, I give all of the credit in the world to Michael. Um, it is such a hard show. It's an intense show. It can be a triggering show for many, many people. But the creative space that Michael created was so open, so warm, so safe. Um, Even though we only had 2 weeks to put it up at City Center, Michael made sure that the first 20 minutes to the half hour of the top of the day was us standing in a circle and just having a group therapy sesh, really. I mean, he always asked the question, is there anything anyone needs to talk about or bring up? He always made sure that we looked at each other in the eye as humans before we started the work. Um, which was important. And he did that when we did the Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat concert at Lincoln Center, right? He even does it with like fluff theater, right? He just makes sure that the humans that are creating whatever they're creating are looking at each other as humans before we start the work. And particularly for Parade, that was so important. Our friends of color are portraying roles that are really hard for them to portray, right? The Jim Crow South, African Americans having to play servants, that's not a role that a lot of Black actors would even consider to do these days. And he was very aware of their choice to be in this show, and he made sure that there was someone on his directing team who was Black and comes from a DEI background and even a spiritual background, so that there was a person on his team that could relate to those company members. And he made sure that there was a sensitivity specialist, a Black female who's very, very good at what she does. So that everything was taken care of with like white gloves. And he made sure that the team that he created was there to support the cast and the company in the creation of this really volatile piece of art, which is, it could have been a terrible experience. And it was the exact opposite because everything was so well thought out and handled with care and love and warmth and safety.
Well, how is it for you every night? Because you're in that scene where, not to give anything away, where Leo is kidnapped, and then you're the one who gives the ring back to Michaela.
Right,
So how is it
right.
for you doing that, especially like towards those particular scenes?
Yeah, I find myself lucky to be one of the white company members who starts out the show a villain, right? Like I'm not a nice person in this show. But
Oh, I
me and
told Paul when he was on my podcast what his character was. So I understand. It's like, how would I describe it? As like a manipulative asshole?
for sure,
I verbally said that to him. So I understand.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like me and Sean Allen Krill, who play the governor, we kind of have arcs, right? So we
Yeah.
start out not so great, and
Mhm.
then we kind of have a bit of an arc, right? So I come around, you know, Lucille mentions in the scene at the top of Act Two, like Mr. Craig, um, he listened to me. He has a what is the line? She essentially says something nice about me, right? So like, and then I do get to give her the ring in the end. So I like that my character has that arc, as he has to reckon with the choices that he's made over the course of the play. And that last scene is just hard. I disassociate, right? I tell my face that my face needs to look a certain way, and then I make a grocery list so that I'm not, I'm like protecting my heart every night from having to really take that in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I told you before we started, I know somebody who saw the show last night and was like, I'm an emotional wreck. I like how I'm doing this with my fingers, like he was texting me, emotional wreck.
Right.
It's gonna take some time to process all that stuff. So I mean it is a real,
Right.
and there's a reason it won Best Revival. The show is really incredible. And I do agree, Michael Arden is just like a visionary.
He's it.
Yeah, he's it.
He's it.
And
Yeah,
very well deserved Tony Award as well.
for sure.
Do you have, other than your Sanderson Sisters Halloween celebration at Sony Hall, soon to be announced release date, what do you have next? Do you have anything planned? Are you still auditioning? I mean, you probably can't say what things are, but do you have some stuff lined up, ready to go?
Not technically. I mean, I have an audition today, later today. So after I get off this interview, I will be going over my sides and my songs for my audition. Um, yeah, I'm trying to approach my life and career as a producer actor these days. So my best friend wrote a book. I'm trying to help her get published. The book is very good, and I also see it very commercially. It seems like it would be a great limited series. So that's one, piece that I'm working on. I also was given a book when I was doing Phantom of the Opera about a historical figure in the early 1900s um, that seems like ripe for some sort of creative story. So I've been reading up a lot on the early 1900s, particularly around this historical figure. So that's another thing that I have coming down the pipeline. Yeah, so being an actor is hard, and I'm looking at unemployment as of August 6th, and not really sure how money is coming into me, but I teach private acting lessons. I can teach master classes at universities and dance studios all over the United States if and when I need to make money. So I just try to stay creative and try to keep as many balls in the air and as possible because I like being a creative. So I'm just trying to,
Keep it creative.
keep my head above water.
Yeah.
Yeah, keep it creative. Yeah, for
So
sure.
do you have any dream roles or projects that you would, I mean, other than playing Frank Abagnale Jr. at the Muni, do you have any other roles or projects that would be like your dream to work on?
I say this often when I'm asked this question, um, and I would love to revisit Floyd Collins. Um, I did it junior year of NYU, and it was the first time that I was able to tackle a role where I was not allowed to use my physicality, right? So like I grew up, a lot of my training as a teenager was dancing. I was a dance major at my performing arts high school. I did a chorus line, I did it on the town. Like dance has been such a major focus of mine. And when I got Floyd at NYU, 20 minutes into the show, I get stuck in a cave and all I have is my voice and my face to tell a story. So it was a big moment of growth for me as an actor, and I fell deeply in love with that musical and deeply in love with the character and deeply in love with Adam Gettle and Junior and in general. It's never actually had a Broadway run. It
Yeah.
was like in the 90s at Playwrights Horizons.
And that's also
And I
another
just
very,
hope,
sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you.
no, please.
I'm just going to take
It's very
over.
parade-like.
Oh, goodness. Ooh. I was gonna say that that's also a very beloved musical as well, Floyd Collins.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Right.
that was it. That's why I interrupted you. But
Oh,
continue.
for sure. And I hear that Tina Landau and Adam Gettle are like working on it still. And there was supposed to be a production that was going out to New Jersey that my friend Christina was directing, but then it got canceled. And so, like I don't know what's happening with it, but if and when something does happen, I would really, 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 really love to play Floyd again.
Well, Eddie Redmayne is also producing Cabaret, and he cast himself as the MC. So
Oh,
you are
yeah.
getting into producing now, just saying.
Just saying.
And you do have access to
That's
Michael
right.
Arden.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I'm gonna work on that.
Yeah. Just like another thing, just add that to the list, like Midsummer, Floyd Collins,
That's right.
other things. So other than Floyd Collins, anything else?
Oh gosh, that's the one that
Mhm.
I've really meditated on ever since I did it at NYU. So yeah, I mean,
If you
I
don't
would
have
really
anything else,
just love.
that's fine. That.
It's really, I don't really.
We move on. Do you have any top going theater experiences?
Um, August Osage County was definitely one of those top theater going experiences. I had one of the worst seats in the house and one of the best experiences ever.
Mhm.
Um, Michael Arden's Spring Awakening, his Deaf West Spring Awakening was pivotal.
Mhm.
He invited me as his opening night guest, and I was just like beyond over the moon that he invited me. Michael Arden's Once on This Island was also a wild, wild theater going experience. I don't think I've cried so hard at a show. Yeah, those three really stick out to me.
Yeah. I nodded
Of course,
so
Michael's
hard
done
about
two of
Spring
them.
Awakening because I saw the original cast many times. Well, that too, but the original production so many
Same,
times. And then I saw
same.
yeah. And there were actually like some aspects of the revival that I kind of liked better than the original
Yeah,
production.
that's right.
Yeah. And I remember when they performed on the Tonys, I put on Facebook, like, I just thought it was really interesting. Like, they could say like certain, I'm trying to remember what I said because the revival performance, they did Bitch of Living and they were
Mm,
able to do the song originally, how it was written. But when they performed it at the Tonys with the original cast, they had to change some words around.
right.
Yeah, that took
I
five.
guess censorship has gotten easier.
Yeah, somebody like posted a reason about it on Facebook, like on the thread. I'm like, I don't care enough to read this, but
Right. Who cares?
yeah. So now it's time for those inside the actors studio questions. Are you ready?
Ooh, so ready?
Okay. So, what is your favorite word?
Fuck.
That's fine. What is your least favorite word? Shit.
Do I have a least favorite word? I mean, I guess I could just be like basic and say moist, but like I don't not like the word moist. I don't know. I guess I don't have one.
I have three.
Oh,
So
well.
yeah. What turns you on?
Um, Kindness,
What turns you off?
um, tardiness.
What is your favorite curse word?
Fuck.
What sound or noise do you love?
A duck quacking?
Okay. What sound or noise do you hate?
Oh, nails on a chalkboard.
I always think of Sister Act 2.
Yes.
It's like, sorry, I
Yes.
had to do hear it. Yeah, every time.
Oh
Um,
God, I can feel it.
me too. I'm sorry I brought it up. What profession other than yours would you like to attempt?
None. No. If it doesn't have something to do with creativity, I don't want it.
Would you ever direct?
Yes.
Okay. That's not a question in the questionnaire. I just added that. What profession would you not like to do?
Anything food service related.
And as James Lipton used to say, and finally, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
You did it.
Here are your students. It's my best James Lipton impression. Thank you.
Nice.
Yeah. So I do have one more question, and I actually sometimes forget to ask this question to people, but I remembered now, so I'll ask you. Why do you think theater is important?
Ooh. Um, Theater is important because oftentimes it's either an escape, pure entertainment for people to forget about their lives for an hour or two or three, um, and be in a collective space, a collective creative space, and or theater puts a mirror up to society, in hopes for change and or deeper thinking and or greater connection. Um, yeah, that's why theater is important.
Great. Do you have anything you want to add? Questions, problems, concerns, life advice before we end our
I don't
recording?
think so, Allison. This was comprehensive AF, hon. You nailed it.
Thank you. That's why I hope that's why people like doing my podcasts.
That's right.
Hey,
We
girl.
get deep, hon.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Like I said, you could stay on once I'm done recording. And thank you guys for listening. And please make sure to catch Parade, the Tony-winning revival of Parade, I should say, by
That's right.
newly minted Tony-winning director Michael Arden at the Jacobs Theater until August 6th. And red.